Semi-finals point again. Only a best of 3 this time around, though. MarineLorD and Leenock take the Frisian Marshes.
Speaking of Frisian Marshes, one of the nice little additions over here, shout out to Abducted Platypus on the behind the scenes works on this, is that down below, right next to the minimap, you can now see the name of the map that we are using. So we have heard your feedback from yesterday. A lot of people were asking what this map is. Now you can check it out at the bottom right of the screen, just right next to the minimap. And as we go deeper in the tournament, as we start using more custom maps, you will always find the exact name of the map over there. And you can check it out in the mod repository yourself, because these are available as in-game mods. You check out the mod center, you type in Frisian Marshes, you can try this map for yourself. You can play it with your friends, and you can, in many ways, try to play very similarly to how these pros are playing against your friends.
Yeah, and guys, like I recommend checking these out. Like there's some remarkable creations of the community. I want to see more support for content creators anyway. We were doing a show match where we would like talking about hypotheticals about ways you could change the pace of the game and other things, because you have those tools. It's not just maps you can create, it's custom game modes, and I think that's the lifeline. That's the thing that really sustains and draws the RTSs, the great RTSs, out for a lot longer than you'd expect. So definitely, if you've ever wanted to create, like, this might be the time to do so. And if you just want to start off with maps, like, if you've got a great idea for a map, we definitely want to see it. But you know what I want to see?
Oh yeah,
I definitely want to see the players reverse their bans and pick the others, because we haven't even mentioned that yet, Lidakor. Like, they banned HRE and Mongols, and then they picked Mongols and HRE.
yeah. Before the tower rush actually comes into play, I just want to add something to what you said, because indeed, we do want to encourage people to make maps, but don't get discouraged. Making maps could be difficult. It is something that's, the tools are not necessarily straightforward, but don't get discouraged. There's a great map making community. They do have a Discord server. So even if you just have an idea, you can, hop into that Discord, tell these guys, hey, I have this idea, I think it would work well, and maybe you can find someone that can help you make that a reality, because, ideas are hard to come by. Like, the map makers that are doing this, they do have some ideas themselves, but you might have in your head the best map idea. We want to see it. So make sure that you reach out to these guys. They're very helpful and very friendly. If you have some ideas like that, make sure to reach out to them, and they will be more than happy to help your map dream become a reality.
I feel like don't get discouraged is going to be the name of this game. Not only when we talk to content creators, potential new map creators, also when we just stare at what's going to happen to MarineLorD's base here. When you lose your gold, don't be discouraged, folks. Don't give up. There is hope for MarineLorD. He at least got enough gold to tech up. We are
he at least has the Minework Palace.
Yeah. Beastie right now is ripping his hair out as you say that.
Yeah, I can imagine Beastie just sitting back home watching this game and saying, okay, don't worry, don't panic if you lose your gold. You still have the Minework Palace copium.
I mean, in some ways, it's useful if you think about Lidakor. Like, he hasn't got much gold, and now he can be more efficient with that gold because he gets a discount on his blacksmith. There you go.
And as you can see, now we have the English language game out here for our observer course. So we're back to emergency repairs from Notfallreparatur, and it's nice to be back, I must say. It was a nice little touch for us to go into the German version of the game and see how that sounds in German, but now we're back with the English version, so all should be good.
Huh, and this, well, it's how we extend the learning that we bring to this channel, Lidakor, because now that they've seen the words in German, they're going to see them in English, and now they can associate them back and forth. It's very smart, actually, what we've done here.
Yeah, like, so you're telling me we should hire MarineLorD to observe next weekend so we see the French version?
Or you could just have him on the cast and you'll hear the French version. So, there you go.
Ooh, mining camp actually goes down over here despite emergency repairs. MarineLorD repaired it once with the emergency repairs, but the cooldown was too long for him, and it looks like Leenock was able to torch down that mining camp. He kind of needs to do that, by the way, because he actually invested into 6 spearmen, so he needs to get something out of that. That's a pretty heavy investment into that Mongol tower rush.
So usually you're going between 4 and 6 maximum. The interesting thing is that he forced MarineLorD to go into archers, though. It's not something we frequently see out the HRE. I'd say this is like the only matchup I see them do this in, actually, because, if you're playing Mongols and you want tower rush, like, there's no other unit you're going to do. Arguably, you could make horsemen, but the cost is the issue, right? Like, instead of paying 80 resources, you're paying 120. And it also slows down the rate at which you get up to 4, because remember, like, you're relying on double production, and that double production is a passive tick up of stun.
Indeed, now looks like that villager is gonna get picked off. Beautiful micro by MarineLorD. You can see that he's pulling back the archers, but the whole time he had his eyes set on that villager, and this is why making these tower rushes happen are more and more difficult, because the players just got so good at sniping down that 1 or 2 villagers you bring. In fact, I think Leenock only brought 1. If he brought 2, that tower probably goes up. But as you pointed out, heavy investment into the spearman, and MarineLorD now has archers, but, you know, there's an asterisk to that. You have archers as the HRE, congratulations. You just made the single unit that you'd never want to make as the HRE.
Why not, Lidakor? Why can't I have 100 archers as HRE and ram rush my opponent?
Well, I mean, you can try that on the ladder. I don't have high hopes for you unless you play in the Bronze League, though. Ooh,
Well, make
housed.
some smurfs.
Wait a second.
Outpost goes down. So, one thing that I kind of like, I take issue with this type of build, by the way, like something like now that I've seen it done by Kazva, I genuinely think more players should be trying it. Kazva understands how powerful outposts are right now. Kazva probably has the best success rate with outpost rushes of any player I've watched in recent weeks. You don't know why? He doesn't bring 1 or 2 villages to the front line, Lidakor. It's 4 or 5. He always guarantees, like, he's very willing to commit. And I think that's kind of the interesting difference here, is that when we watch a lot of players in competitive go for these outposts, it's kind of a nonchalant thing, right? Like, if I get the outpost up, nice, but if I don't, I'm only down like 1 villager. Instead of like doubling down on the game plan.
Yeah, obviously it has a much bigger impact on your economy, because you're gonna have 2 villagers essentially not gathering resources while walking through the map. But as you said, it's safer, and this is actually a principle that Kazva brought in from AoE 2. In there, when you reached Castle Age, oftentimes you go for a forward siege workshop, and for a long time it was discussed that you always pull 2 villagers, because you assume that 1 villager is gonna get killed on the way, because your opponent is, well, a high-level player as well, so he has the capacity and the skills to kill 1 of those, so you always pull 2. Now, it looks like Leenock is going to pull a 2nd villager out here for a tower again. Looks like he's also successful intercepting those scouts. That's a great pick off for him. And he's going pretty aggressive on the spearman horseman composition here. MarineLorD, though, getting closer and closer to Castle Age. That villager being heavily damaged by what I think was probably a wolf.
I think what Leenock is doing is sensible, though. You can't just try to rush up against the HRE, right? If you get, it's kind of well documented and agreed now that if you try to like eco boom against HRE, you're gonna have a really, really bad day. So you need to find a way of combating them early, and I think that's where the Mongols can be remarkable. I love the fact that he invested in the Horseman in the situation. Horsemen that you can access early on as the Mongols, you don't even technically need to make your way up past Dark Age to do so, because you get them so early in the game. So he was always ready for this type of transition being required. And the remarkable thing is like the slowdown. Although MarineLorD is going to get his tech up first, Leenock gets the wiggle room to set up outposts. If you look at his resources, he's not that far off castle himself.
And the idea here for Leenock is that Mongols can also squeeze out a relatively fast Castle Age after Dark Age aggression, and you see this is exactly what Leenock is doing. As you pointed out, he hasn't even gotten the Feudal Age Horseman upgrade. He just wanted some of those units out there to make sure that those archers can't harass his gold mine, and he just wants to rush to Castle Age as soon as possible. He's banking up the resources for it, and honestly, if you are not beaten by an HRE to Castle Age by a massive margin, you have to be happy. So you see Leenock is going to be behind by like 30 seconds maximum. He has to be happy with that, and he's going to have the immediate buff of the step redoubt working for him. Pilots now moving out for relics though. Leenock is going to try to limit the access of MarineLorD to the said relics. We only have 4 relics spawning on this map, I think. Am I right about that one?
Yes, you are. And I'll just highlight that right now. Like that, this is an issue with the custom map tool. It's already been highlighted. It's going to get fixed in the pop, and has been fixed in the pop, but we haven't got that on live yet. It's an issue to do with custom relic generation, and the issue is like you could say we'll just use default, but default can sometimes just be incredibly random on these custom maps. So we've watched a lot of these spawns, and most of the time, like we've seen pretty fair spawns overall. Like if it goes down to 4 relics, it's 2 spread on each side. It is unfortunate we don't get our top 5. And hopefully we'll get Pup to live soon so that we can have that wholly fixed. But I think the upsides of having Frizzy and they're still outweighing these awkward little kinks in the sheet, right? Like, I think the main things we've heard complaints around is like, we haven't really heard too many complaints around. This is the funny part, actually. The one we've heard some complaints around is there's a lot of sheep on this map. And I think those are 2 things that Adney is still looking at right now, trying to see if there is still a workaround in the meantime on the relics. and then maybe reassessing whether the sheep count needs to come down a little bit.
Yeah, but this is just the natural evolution of the map, right? Like, it's the best way to test the map is just to have a bunch of games played on it. So
Yeah.
we have seen slow iterations to maps like Hillandale, for example, from the developer side as well. So just like the devs are monitoring the performance of these maps in the game, we're also monitoring the performance of the custom maps involved in the tournament. And one could righteously ask, why don't you test it before the tournament? Well, mostly because the best way to test this is to play hundreds of games on it with different civilization scenarios. It's impossible to find pro players that can commit hundreds of hours to testing this for us. So, to a certain extent,
sure.
there is a testing phase, but obviously, only the maps that work well by default, or at least are reasonably functional, get selected for this. So you see, this map usually works very well, has minor issues, of course, but every single map in the map pool has minor issues, I feel.
Absolutely. Like, it's the way that you test these is by putting out to the public. Like, it's, and we have some bad instances of that with like early access these days, but realistically, it's the way you have to go because, speaking from a designer perspective, like when you break games down, like you usually break what you're going to build your game up into three like categories. You have your mechanics, your dynamics, your aesthetics, and dynamics is the one I'm going to focus on here because like dynamics is what people do with the mechanics. The mechanic is, I can attack or I can build these type of things. Dynamics are how people use them to do things in the game. And if you ever ask a designer what they expect a game to do, like what they anticipate dynamics are, the things they list, it's never a complete list until they stick it out in the hands of their player base and then discover there's like 80% more dynamics they didn't even realize was feasible. That's when your eyes are opened. And that's the thing we're going to have these custom maps. Like, it is going to be a work in process, but we're doing it at the right time. When we have a long-winded format of Age of Empires 4 building up over several months, this is prime time to start introducing custom maps.
Exactly, and part of the reason why we don't just flood the pro players with custom maps and say, hey, let's use 7 custom maps this week is because it is a smooth transition. We want to involve one custom map first and then add a second one, slowly sort of transition to that stage where preparing for a tournament is also going to include you checking out the maps, thinking about strategies, because for the last half a year or almost a year of Age of Empires 4, prepping for a tournament was you essentially grinding the ladder maps because those are going to be the maps that you play anyways. But now, MarineLorD is going into Imperial, so I guess we should go back to focusing on the game. Leenock, on the other hand, looks like he's banking up resources for what is going to be a second town center, I believe.
Yeah, but Leenock's in a bad state right now. His military force is pretty baby level. He hasn't even got 10. Well, he's got 10, exactly. He hasn't got more than 10. And the problem with this is, like, he's relied upon infantry. He hasn't really got the way to make a dent in his opponent's base. I believe he did get the siege engineering improved, but the build-up speed in this is going to be notably slow. And I do feel like MarineLorD, like, he's going to be able to see with this outpost, and he can jump. You can see the triple stable being prepped. A hard push of knights to just run this through, and a few man-at-arms and crossbows will not stop that from being the case.
And one of the things that we have had a bit less chance to discuss is that this map is actually very open. So if you take a look at Leenock's base, even if he wasn't the Mongols, walling his base would be very difficult. Obviously, with the Mongols, it's completely impossible, but even if you were, let's say, the French, it's difficult to wall the right side of your base. So cavalry-based approaches can always work nicely. And in contrast to, let's say, Arabia, it is much more of an open map on the front. The raidability of your resources varies, actually, because sometimes your golds are very safe, your forests are relatively safe, but the openness of your base is much larger than it is in the case of Arabia, for example.
Yeah, one thing I quite like about Frizin is that you always have one wood line at the corner or next to the corner. So like you at least have wood as a safe resource. The reason I think this is important is because a lot of counterplay relies upon wood, whether it's to build up the military buildings or build up outposts, palisade walls, like all the means to counter rushes early or pivot in the mid game, like at the center of it in some way relies upon wood. So really big shout out to Adney for identifying that resource needs to be allowed. And I think by doing so, you do kind of shortchange the cheesy nature of these outpost rushes and offer up people ways of defending and consolidating the location of their defenses compared to more open maps.
Speaking of outpost rushes, Leenock is setting himself up on that little hill to the left of MarineLorD's town center, and he's already dropping quite a lot of outposts over here with Spring Golden placements. For a brief moment, he even dropped the forward blacksmith, but that probably was just the wrong hotkey, and he ended up canceling it. The concern for him is that MarineLorD is now up to Imperial and he has access to bombards, and there's just plain and simple no response from Leenock to bombards.
No, it's something he won't be able to answer because he went for man-at-arms and crossbows. He's got like 1 or 2 lances, but that's just not going to cut it. Like right now, you can see MarineLorD, he's actually propping a lot of horsemen alongside this. So it is going to be a rush out, and this is a good solution to what he's up against. It'll allow him to quickly blitz down all the siege. The crossbows will be counted out directly, and the man-at-arms don't get bonus damage up against these horsemen and will struggle to stay on top of them.
Yeah, obviously the towers will help a tiny bit, but you're gonna have the support of those bombards, and MarineLorD doesn't need to rush this. So far, he has lost, I think, 1 tower, and that was it. He can constantly use emergency repairs to keep his starting town center alive, or worst case scenario, pull some villagers, or dare I say, even just, you know, give up on that town center and say, okay, I don't need it, I have the Pass of Schwabi anyways, I have a lot more landmarks I can work with. And it's all about just buying yourself time for that horseman transition. As you said, he's grabbing the upgrades right now. It looks like he's ready to move out.
That bombard wasn't even attacking the traps, he was going for the outpost, so repairs is going to slow down the siege, but seems like it's not going to be stopped anytime too soon. The question now is what Leenock invests in. It looks like he's going to be the Springles to try and directly counter out the bombard. Remember, the Springles, like, they have the same range as the bombards, so if you get enough of them up, which you can as the Mongols, you can instantly just snipe this out.
But MarineLorD...
Yep. Mistakes made.
Oh,
MarineLorD.
that's
He's in
ugly.
range of the outpost as well. Needs to be careful about this. Springle shot's coming in, trying to get him low. Now the rush out of the horseman. Hesitant to dive here against the double outpost with Springles replacements, though.
Yeah, looks like the town center is still getting trapped down over here in MarineLorD. He's actually contemplating using his emergency repairs and villagers out there. And as you pointed out, he's going for the towers. Because he can deal with the trebuchets using his horsemen, but he wants to make sure he loses as little military as possible. And it looks like now we have that clash coming up.
And Leenock's just chasing in. He's trying to get on top of this. Force the bombard away. Peels off some of the man-at-arms to try and defend because his siege line, he doesn't want it to be exposed here. Crossbow's going to hold a small contingent of horsemen at bay, and the horsemen commit onto the MAA instead of chasing the crossbows. So MarineLorD taking a very systemic approach, this like trying to break it down and just move from one element to the other. Now that the man-at-arms are gone, he can chase in. And this is where Leenock might have to retreat. But if he does retreat, he's going to be forfeiting all the traction trebuchets because the horsemen will not stop.
And he's also going to forfeit all those towers out there to the bombards. Love how MarineLorD approached this. He could have chased the crossbows, but he realized that he doesn't want to lose that bombard. He leaves those men-at-arms alive, there's a chance he loses his bombard. He knows very well that he can still chase down these crossbows because they're just so far away from Leenock's base. And Leenock also knows that. He's going to tap out. Like, what can you do in this case? You're up against Imperial, 80 villagers already for MarineLorD. He's got a standing army and you will lose your own. And Leenock, he's going to be down against MarineLorD here on Frisian Marshes. Very convincing game here from MarineLorD. Methodical, slow-paced game. And this is one of the things that we also love about this map as an opener. It features so many different styles of gameplay. This was a much more slow and methodical game, but we have seen some crazy levels of aggression from players before, whether it is with a fast castle, whether it is with a fast feudal. And the diversity that this map brings in is also, to a point, remarkable and super fun to look at. MarineLorD takes game number 1 over here. Convincing game here with the HRE. He moves on to match point in this best of 3.
Yeah, very slow approach to the game from both players, I felt like. Even though, and I can't believe I'm saying that, even though Leenock tried to rush with outposts, but this kind of shows how, as you said, you have got the flexibility to play these different playstyles, but I think this also is an encouragement to those more aggressive playstyles and the way we've been seeing in other series because they can net you huge gains on this map.